It's time for another chapter of Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. This chapter is chapter 16, and it's called Off to the Fair. So a fair is like a carnival. The night before the county fair, everybody went to bed early. Fern and Avery were in bed by 8. Avery lay dreaming that the Ferris wheel had stopped and he was stuck in the top car. Fern lay dreaming that she was getting sick in the swings. Lurvy was in bed by 8:30. He lay dreaming that he was throwing baseballs at a cloth cat and winning a new blanket. Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman were in bed by 9. Mrs. Zuckerman lay dreaming about a new freezer. Mr. Zuckerman lay dreaming about Wilbur. He dreamt that Wilbur had grown until he was 116 feet long and 92 feet high. That's probably like Clifford's size. And that he had won all the prizes at the fair and was covered in blue ribbons, and even had a blue ribbon tied to the end of his tail. Down in the barn cellar, the animals, too, went to sleep early, all except Charlotte. Tomorrow will be fair day. Every creature planned to get up early to see Wilbur off on his great adventure. When morning came, everybody got up at daylight. The day was hot. Up the road at the Arabelle's house, Fern lugged a pail of hot water to her room and took a sponge bath. It means she just wetted a cloth and kind of wiped down to get clean. Then she put on her prettiest dress because she knew she would see boys at the fair. Mrs. Arabelle scrubbed the back of Avery's neck, wet his hair and parted it, brushed it down hard until it stuck to the top of his head. All but about 6 hairs that stood straight up. Avery put on clean underwear, clean blue jeans, and a clean shirt. Mr. Arbell dressed, ate breakfast, and then went out and polished his truck. He had offered to drive everybody to the fair, including Wilbur. Bright and early, Lurvy put clean straw in Wilbur's crate and lifted it into the pig pen. The crate was green. In gold letters it said, "Zuckerman's Famous Pig." Charlotte had her web looking fine for the occasion. Wilbur ate his breakfast slowly. He tried to look radiant without getting any food in his ears. In the kitchen, Mrs. Zuckerman suddenly made an announcement. "Homer," she said to her husband, "I am going to give that pig a buttermilk bath." "A what?" said Mr. Zuckerman. "A buttermilk bath. My grandmother used to bathe her pig with buttermilk when it got dirty. I just remembered." "Wilbur's not dirty," said Mr. Zuckerman proudly. "He's filthy behind the ears," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "Every time Lurvy slops him, the food runs down round his ears. Then it dries and forms a crust. He also has a smudge on one side where he lays in the manure." "He lays in clean straw," corrected Mr. Zuckerman. "Well, he's dirty and he's going to have a bath." Mr. Zuckerman sat down weakly and ate a donut. His wife went to the woodshed. When she returned, she wore rubber boots, an old raincoat, and carried a bucket of buttermilk and a small wooden paddle. "Edith, you're crazy," mumbled Mr. Zuckerman. She paid no attention to him. Together they walked to the pig pen. Mrs. Zuckerman wasted no time. She climbed in with Wilbur and went right to work. Dipping her paddle in the buttermilk, she rubbed him all over. The geese gathered around to see the fun, and so did the sheep and the lambs. Even Templeton poked his head out cautiously to watch Wilbur get a buttermilk bath. Charlotte got so interested, she lowered herself on a drag line, as part of her web, so she could see better. Wilbur stood still and closed his eyes. He could feel the buttermilk trickling down his sides. He opened his mouth, and some buttermilk ran in. It was delicious. He felt radiant and happy. When Mrs. Zuckerman got through and rubbed him dry, he was the cleanest, prettiest pig you ever saw. He was pure white, pink around the ears and snout, and smooth as silk. So when she washed him with buttermilk, it's just an ingredient. It's a type of milk that tastes a little bit like butter. People use it in waffles and a lot of cooking Back in the olden times, this is a bit of an older book. So they used a lot more buttermilk back then because they have cows. It's easy to make buttermilk from cows. The Zuckermans went up to change into their best clothes. Lurvy went to shave and put on a plaid shirt with a purple necktie. The animals were left to themselves in the barn. The 7 goslings paraded round and round their mother. Please, please, please take us to the fair, begged a gosling. Then all 7 began teasing to go. Please, 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 please. They made quite a racket. Children, snapped the goose, we're staying quietly, idly at home. Only Wilbur is going to the fair. Just then, Charlotte interrupted. I shall go too, she said softly. I have decided to go with Wilbur. He may need me. We can't tell what may happen at the fairgrounds. Somebody's got to go along who knows how to write. And I think Templeton had better come too. Your Teegan. I might need somebody to run errands and do general work. I'm staying right here, grumbled the rat. I haven't the slightest interest in fairs. That's because you've never been to one, remarked an old sheep. A fair is a rat's paradise. Everybody spills food at the fair. A rat can creep out late at night and have a feast. In the horse barn, you'll find oats that trotters and pacers have spilled. They're just helping out with the horses. In the trampled grass of the infield, you'll find old, discarded lunchboxes containing the gross remains of peanut butter sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, cracker crumbs, bits of donuts, and particles of cheese. In the hard-packed dirt of the midway, after the glaring lights are out and people have gone home to bed, you'll find a treasure of popcorn fragments, frozen custard dribblings, candied apples abandoned by tired children, sugar fluff crystals, salted almonds, popsicles, partly gnawed ice cream cones, and wooden sticks of lollipops. Everywhere is loot for a rat. In tents, in booths, in haylofts. Why, a fair has enough disgusting leftovers to satisfy a whole army of rats. Templeton's eyes were blazing. Is it true? He asked. Is this appetizing yarn of yours true? A yarn is just, they're talking a lot. I like high living, and what you say tempts me. It is true, said the old sheep. Go to the fair, Templeton. You will see the conditions of the fair would surpass your wildest dreams. Buckets with sour mash sticking to them, tin cans containing particles of tuna fish, greasy paper bags stuffed with rotten. That's enough, cried Templeton. Don't tell me any more. I'm going. Good, said Charlotte, winking at the old sheep. Now then, there's no time to be lost. Wilbur will soon be put into the crate. Templeton and I must get in the crate right now and hide ourselves. The rat didn't waste a minute. He scampered over to the crate, crawled in between the slats, and pulled straw up and over him so he was hidden from sight. All right, said Charlotte. I'm next. She sailed into the air, let out a drag line, remember that's one of her web strings, and dropped gently to the ground. She climbed the side of the crate and hid herself in a knot hole in the top board. Just a little hole. The sheep nodded. What a cargo, she said. The sign ought to say, Zuckerman's famous pig, and 2 stowaways, because they're hiding. Look out, the people are coming, umming, shouted the gander. Cheese it, cheese it, cheese it. That means be quiet. The big truck with Mr. Arabelle at the wheel backed slowly down toward the barnyard. Lurvy and Mr. Zuckerman walked alongside. Fern and Avery were standing in the body of the truck, hanging onto the sideboards. So they're in the back of the truck. Listen to me, whispered the old sheep to Wilbur. When they open the crate and try to put you in, struggle. Don't go without a tussle. Pigs always resist when they're being loaded. If I struggle, I'll get dirty, said Wilbur. Never mind that. Do as I say. Struggle. If you were to walk into the crate without resisting, Zuckerman might think you were bewitched. He'd be scared to go to the fair. So they want Wilbur acting like a normal pig. Templeton poked his head through the straw. Struggle if you must, he said, but kindly remember, I'm hiding down here in the crate, and I don't want to be stepped on, or kicked in the face, or pummeled, or crushed in any way, or squashed, or bruised, or scarred. Just watch what you're doing, please. Mr. Radiant, when they are shoving you in. Be quiet, Templeton, said the sheep. Pull in your head. They're coming. Look radiant, Wilbur. Lay low, Charlotte. Tuck it up, geese. The truck backed slowly to the pig pen and stopped. Mr. Arbell cut the motor, got out, walked round to the back, and lowered the tailgate. The geese cheered. Mr. Arbell got out of the truck. Fern and Avery jumped to the ground. Mrs. Zuckerman came walking down from the house. Everybody lined up at the fence and stood for a moment, admiring Wilbur and the beautiful green crate. Nobody realized that the crate already contained a rat and a spider. That's some pig, said Mrs. Arbell. He's terrific, said Lurvy. He's very radiant, said Fern, remembering the day he was born. Well, said Mrs. Zuckerman, he's clean anyway. The buttermilk certainly helped. Mr. Arbell studied Wilbur carefully. Yes, he's a wonderful pig, he said. It's hard to believe he was the runt of the litter. You'll get some extra good ham and bacon, Homer, when it gets time to kill that pig. Wilbur heard these words, and his heart almost stopped. I think I'm going to faint, he whispered to the old sheep who was watching. Kneel down, whispered the old sheep. Let the blood rush to your head. Wilbur sank to his knees, all radiance gone. His eyes closed. Look, screamed Fern. He's fading away. Hey, watch me, yelled Avery, crawling on all fours. I'm a pig! I'm a pig! Avery's foot touched Templeton under the straw. What a mess, thought the rat. What fantastic creatures boys are. Why did I let myself in for this? The geese saw Avery in the crate and cheered. Avery, get out of that crate this instant, commanded his mother. What do you think you're doing? I'm a pig, cried Avery, tossing handfuls of straw in the air. Oink, oink, oink. The truck is rolling away, Papa, said Fern. The truck, with no one at the wheel, had started to roll downhill. Mr. Arbell dashed to the driver's seat and pulled on the emergency brake. The truck stopped. The geese cheered again. Charlotte crouched and made herself as small as possible in the knothole, so Avery wouldn't see her. Come out at once, cried Mrs. Arabelle. Avery crawled out of his hands and knees, making faces at Wilbur. Wilbur fainted away. The pig has passed out, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Throw water on him. Throw buttermilk, suggested Avery. The geese cheered again. Lurvy ran for a pail of water. Fern climbed into the pen and knelt beside Wilbur's side. It's sunstroke, said Zuckerman. The heat is too much for him. Maybe he's dead, said Avery. Come out of that pig pen immediately, cried Mrs. Arabelle. Avery obeyed his mother and climbed into the back of the truck so he could see better. Lurvy returned with cold water and splashed it on Wilbur. Throw some on me, cried Avery. I'm hot too. Oh, be quiet, hollered Fern. Be quiet. Her eyes were brimming with tears. Wilbur, feeling the cold water, came to since he woke up. He rose slowly to his feet. Well, the geese cheered. Oh, he's up, said Mr. Arabelle. I guess there's nothing wrong with him. I'm hungry, said Avery. I want a candied apple. Oh, Wilbur's all right now, said Fern. We can start. I want to take a ride in the Ferris wheel. Mr. Zuckerman and Mr. Arabelle and Lurvy grabbed the pig and pushed him headfirst down toward the crate. Wilbur began to struggle. The harder the men pushed, the harder he held back. Avery jumped down and joined the men. Wilbur kicked and thrashed and grunted. "Nothing wrong with this pig," said Mr. Zuckerman, cheerfully, putting his knee against Wilbur's behind. "All together now, boys. Shove!" With a final heave, they jammed him into the crate. The geese cheered. Lurvy nailed some boards across the end, so Wilbur couldn't get back out. Then, using all their strength, the men picked up the crate and heaved it onto the truck. They didn't know that under the straw was a rat, and inside a little knothole was a big gray spider. They only saw a pig. "Everybody in," called Mr. Arabelle. He started the motor. The ladies climbed in beside him. Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy and Fern and Avery rode in the back, hanging onto the sideboard. The truck began to move ahead. The geese cheered. The children answered their cheer, and everyone went to the fair. Oh, that's the end of that chapter. That was a very eventful chapter. A lot happened. Wilbur got too hot. They had to convince Templeton to get into the crate. Then Avery got in the crate and could have seen Charlotte. A lot happened that time. So make sure that you check your old prediction and you make a new prediction for the next chapter. The next chapter will be a little bit shorter than that one. It was a long one. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!